again, folks. Skillful Mission here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my series, The Kings of Judah. And today we're going to be looking at the third king of Judah, and his name was Asa. He was the son of King Abijah, which we talked about last week. Go click the link right above to check it out and watch that episode first before this one. So like I said, folks, we're going to be talking about King Asa today. And let me just say right off the bat that Asa is going to be the first pretty decent or good king that Judah has had. One of the few good ones that Judah will have throughout its existence as a kingdom. So where we're going to start in 1 Kings. It's going to start in chapter 15. And we're going to start in verse 9. His story starts from verse 9 all the way to about verse 24, from the time of his ascension to the throne to the time of his death. And so like I said, folks, last episode we talked about Abijah, who was king of Judah before his son Asa was. And it says in verse 8 of chapter 15, "And Abijah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his stead." So this is where our story picks up right now, folks. So let's begin. So when you start in verse 9, folks, it talks about how Jeroboam, this is his 20th year as king over Israel. And when around this time, this is when Asa becomes king over Judah. And verse 10 talks about how Asa was king of Judah for over 41 years. That's a pretty lengthy amount of time to be king of Judah. And his mother's name was Maacah. I'm not sure how you say it exactly, folks, but we'll just go with that. And she was the daughter of Abishalom. These names sometimes, folks, I hope I'm saying them right. And when you get to verse 11, it talks about how Asa, he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, as did David his father. So like I said, folks, Asa is the first good king that Judah has had. He wasn't perfect, but he was genuinely an honest and good king over Judah. And when you read the next few verses, it talks about the good things he did. Verse 12, it talks about how he took away all the Sodomites out of the land of Judah, and he removed all the idols which his father had made. And verse 13 is pretty cool because it talks about how he also removed his mother, Maacah, even her he removed from being queen because she had made an idol in a grove. And so Asa destroyed her idol and burnt it in the brook of Kidron. Now that's pretty awesome, folks. That's pretty bad. That's pretty awesome of him. That's pretty bold as well. Verse 14, it talks about pretty much like the one thing he did not do that probably would have made him one of the best kings ever of Judah. It talks about in verse 14 how he did not remove the high places, but nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with the Lord all the days of his life. So that's pretty much the one thing Asa did not do, which should have been done while he was king, is remove the high places. And if I'm being honest, folks, the high places are going to be there for quite a while until one king removes them for good for a while. But we're pretty far from that king, so let's continue on. And when you get to verse 16 of chapter 15 and all the way through about verse 22, it talks about how there was war between Asa, king of Judah, and Israel gets a new king. His name is Baasha. So Baasha is the new king of Israel. And throughout all the days of King Asa and Baasha, they were at war with each other, Israel and Judah. And Baasha, king of Israel, actually is trying to go up to war against Judah. And Asa, king of Judah, and Judah itself, they need some help. Because Israel is, I believe Israel is quite bigger. I mean, they do have 10 tribes of Israel, and so it would make sense if their armies were a little bit bigger. And so Asa decides to do something that I think is a pretty good idea. So Asa decides that he needs to make an alliance with another country in order to defeat Baasha and Israel. So Asa decides to make an alliance with the king of Syria. His name is Ben-Hadad, and he is king of Syria right now. And Asa makes an alliance with him, and he's basically telling Syria, hey, look, I need some help because Baasha and Israel, they're coming up against me, and I know you have ties with them, but listen, we can have a better alliance than you and Israel do. If you could just please help us out right now, we could repay you handsomely, so to speak. And the king of Syria agreed. He's like, okay, yeah, we'll help you out. And so they did. So Asa, king of Judah, along with Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, and both their countries, they destroyed Israel. And because of this, Baasha, king of Israel, he had to back off. And after that, it's pretty much the end of Asa's story and what he did while he was reigning as king of Judah. So God, I guess you could say, in a way, pretty much saved Judah again from Israel. So Judah has been spared thanks to King Asa with the help of Ben-Hadad, king of Syria. When you get down to verse 23 through 24, it talks about, at the end of verse 23, how Asa, he actually gets a disease on his feet. And it doesn't say right here. I know somewhere else in the Bible it talks about how when Asa got this disease on his feet, he actually consulted with the physicians of his time and actually not with God. So I guess there's two things he really didn't do that could have made him a really good king. One makes you wonder why he didn't consult with God or ask God to heal him. He actually consulted the physicians of his time, but oh well. And verse 24, it talks about how he slept with his fathers. Same old story. He was buried in the city of David with his fathers. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead. Now, if you don't know about Jehoshaphat, folks, he was a pretty good king too. If I remember correctly, I'll do my studying for next week for the next episode. And that is it, folks. That is the end of this episode. That is Asa, the third king of Judah. And like I said, he's a pretty good king. Not perfect, but nevertheless, his heart was perfect with the Lord, as the Bible would say. If you folks enjoyed this episode, I hope you did. Leave a like and comment. Subscribe to Join the Eyes today. And folks, I'll see you in the next video or the next episode of this next week. Thank you folks so much. God bless you all. Have a great day.